So, cost of living continues to increase in many parts of the United States. And I told you a couple weeks ago about this study where earning minimum wage, a worker working full time could not afford a two-bedroom apartment in any of the 50 states in the United States of America. And we talk about many of the issues on which Democrats and Republicans are the same or too similar. On the issue of the minimum wage, there's a really big difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats have been having a debate about $12 or $15 per hour as the target for the minimum wage, and they've settled on $15 per hour. Republicans, on the other hand, seemingly emboldened by the stunning incompetence of Donald Trump, are lowering the minimum wage in many states. So let me set it up for you. Trump, scandal after scandal, real news, making the U.S. a laughingstock around the world, as we talked about earlier today. Republican legislation at the federal level, that's a disaster, which is also real news. The attempt to replace the Affordable Care Act with a disaster, to gut Medicaid, horrible tax reform, building this wall with Mexico that has low support and would not even really solve our problem with immigration, the travel ban, really long list, and also real news, relevant. And at the state level, there are disasters going on that are not making national headlines because understandably there's so much going on. And Republicans have been successfully working to lower the minimum wage that businesses are allowed to pay workers in a number of states. Missouri overturned a St. Louis law that raised the city's minimum wage to $10 an hour. The new law now in Missouri is that cities and counties simply can't have higher minimum wages than the state minimum wage. So in St. Louis, the minimum wage is down from $10 an hour to $7.70 an hour. In March in Iowa, Republicans rolled back mandatory pay increases in certain jurisdictions. In other states, lawsuits have been used. For example, a few months ago in Kentucky, the state Supreme Court overturned a Louisville ordinance raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. They determined that it violated the state's constitution. In Maine, Republicans, with the help of some Democrats, actually, ended up allowing the hourly wage for tipped employees to be decreased to only $3.75 an hour. And bear in mind that these increased wages were very low, right? Even $10 an hour in St. Louis, if you work 40 hours a week at $10 an hour and take no vacation all year, meaning 52 weeks a year, you're making under $21,000. And once again, yes, Democrats and Republicans are similar on way too many issues. On some issues, Democrats and Republicans could not be more different. And there's been a debate among the Democrats, which I think is also thinking too small. Do we want to go with $15 an hour or should it be 12? And Dems wanted 15, Hillary Clinton wanted 12. What's the implication of one versus the other? Not an amazingly lavish idea to begin with. St. Louis, however, thanks to Republicans, has gone from $10 an hour to $7.70 an hour. Stunning.
And let's be clear, that's not conservative either. I mean, there's a legitimate point to be made for the conservative ideology. You know, society's changing and we need to adapt to those changes, but let's be careful about how we do that.
Okay.
That's not what this is. This
No.
is regressive. We had this plan in place for the minimum wage to go up in these cities, and they're literally reversing it, and people are accounting on those pay raises when they maybe sign up for loans or what have you.
Well, you will hear from the right that when you raise the minimum wage, it's dangerous at the macroeconomic level because if you raise the cost of labor, businesses will buy less of it and thus unemployment will go up. And it is true that one of the effects of a higher minimum wage can be that companies have more incentive to automate, for example, although many companies are looking to do that anyway, or they have reason to raise prices for whatever product or service they produce. And that it also has the effect of increasing productivity for workers since they're being paid more. But there are lots of really good results for increasing the minimum wage. You lower turnover, for example. Having to find new workers is really expensive for businesses. If people are getting paid more, they're less likely to quit. Another major advantage to a higher minimum wage is you're increasing the purchasing power of the population. And if you look at the net effect of a minimum wage increase, that is reasonable, right? We're not talking about $400 an hour. The net effect is positive on the economy. Now, it's not a black and white thing, right? You hear from the right, if a higher minimum wage is good, set the minimum wage to $400 an hour. Don't fall for that. No one is suggesting that. That's not an equilibrium minimum wage given the cost of living in American society. No one is suggesting that. And this is just going to be a bigger and bigger issue over time with automation and continued offshoring, or even the destruction of manufacturing and other types of jobs, transportation. We need to actually be thinking about universal basic income. And I'm not going to go into my whole spiel about that now. But that's an increased issue when we talk about $7.70 versus $10. We need a paradigm shift.
We just have to keep our priorities in order too, especially because Republicans are trying to pass their health care plan right now, and that's filled with tax cuts that would primarily benefit the rich. Then when they come back from the congressional recess in September, that's when they plan to take on tax reform, and that will be filled with plenty of more tax cuts.
And hopefully it will still be scandal after scandal, and it won't even be discussed the way that it's basically been dead for, at this point, a couple of months.